That lies ahead for the suspect is attorney Brian Claypool. Brian, thank you so much for being here. You know, we have a Fox Digital reporter, Christina Corbin. She's on the ground in Moscow, Idaho, been doing incredible reporting. She did do a sit-down interview with the Moscow police chief, and she asked the question that so many of us are also asking. Take a listen.
Does the suspect have any known connection to the victims or the victims' extended network, or do you believe these 4 victims were randomly targeted?
You know, that's part of that investigation that we're still putting pieces together. We're still gathering information. That's why we still ask people, you know, send us tips on the individual. Send us any information you have, because that's all going to build part of that picture. Still, it's going to give us even more information.
Brian, the chief told Christina that they received about 400 calls within an hour, which leads me to believe to question how exactly they got to the point where they were getting to the point to arrest this guy.
Hey, Alicia, great to be with you and Happy New Year. I mean, I think the game changer was the car. I've learned that they traced this car for weeks and finally located it, and that's what led them to Kohlberger. But look, what really concerns me here is we're all happy that he's been arrested, but we can't do the celebration parade yet. He hasn't been convicted. And let's walk through the process. The first stage of a murder prosecution is an arrest. It takes less evidence to get an arrest warrant than it does to sustain what's called a preliminary hearing that's going to happen in a couple of weeks in Idaho, and then an actual trial. And why is that important? Because these forensic experts, Alicia, they are going to have to work around the clock. You've got 4 potential crime scenes. You've got the scene of the crime, his apartment, Pullman, you got the parents' home, and you've got the car. They've got to be scouring all 4 of those, especially the car now. For example, any blood stains in the car, any hair fibers on the seat of the car, any fingerprints on the steering wheel that might have DNA. And here's another big game changer. I think this could be the breaking piece of evidence in this case. They are going to need to get a DNA sample, a DNA swab of Kohlberger. Either he does it voluntarily, or they got to get a court order ASAP to get his DNA swab. And 2 of these victims had defense wounds. So I bet you anything that there might be some his skin under the fingernails of 2 of these victims, and they'll now be able to do that DNA match. I think that's really what's going to break this case. Now, last point I want to make is you got his phone, right? You got to go back to phone records, any text messages, because it would really help the case, Alicia, if they could show he knew these victims, right? Because the chief came out and said, look, this was targeted. So was he texting any of these victims? On social media, was he connected to any of these victims? Right. And then also his bank records.
And we don't have those answers yet, because under Idaho law, everything is sealed until he gets to the state of Idaho, which leads me to the question about extradition. He has an extradition hearing next week. Could he fight this in a way that will significantly slow things down, or do you think he's going to be in Idaho by next week?
Right. I think he's going to be in Idaho by next week. And again, I'm not defending this guy, but if he's smart and if he's talked to a lawyer and his lawyer's smart, they would waive extradition. Why? Because that accelerates the process. Under Idaho law, for example, within 14 days, Alicia, of him having his first court appearance in Idaho, there has to be a preliminary hearing. That's critical, because the prosecutors then need to have what's called substantial evidence at that preliminary hearing to prove each element of the crime. That's why this forensic analysis process is crucial. It's got to be done 24/7 within the next 2 weeks.
Brian Claypool, we appreciate your time and expertise today, and we do want to wish you a Happy New Year.